Good evening, folks, and welcome to this week's edition of Grumpy Old Men. I am Kurt Bevacqua, and normally you can see Hank Bauer, my partner, on the screen also, but not this week. Hank's putting us all to shame, and he's on vacation in Hawaii, so it's just me and you. So sit back and enjoy yourself. And I do have a little bit of a treat for you. Being that we're in a part of the country that is on the minds of baseball fans throughout the United States, and I say that because of the fact that the San Diego Padres might have become the most talked about baseball team in Major League Baseball this winter because of all the moves General Manager A.J. Preller and naturally the owners made with the acquiring of Blake Snell, the trades of Yu Darvish, and just the farm system, all the wonderful talent that this organization has. So I thought, how fitting would it be for the Padres play-by-play guy, and I'm talking about radio, but when I tell you what, this guy is a jack of all trades and a master of them all, I'm not exaggerating. We're going to get into that with Jesse Agler in a minute, but he's going to be our guest tonight, and he has done everything you can do. And when I say this, I'm not exaggerating. This guy is flat out good. And I'm just not saying it because he's on the show, but there's only a couple of guys that I put in his category, and I'm not going to embarrass him by throwing out the names of those guys. I'm going to wait until he goes, and then I'll throw them out to you. But I'd like to welcome to the show. Oh, by the way, Grumpy Old Men, Hank Bauer is the grumpiest of between him and I, and he's gone, so you don't have to worry about him tonight. Jesse, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
KB, thanks for having me. Good to see you, and thank you for the nice words. I appreciate it.
It's good to see. It's good to see you also. And I was quite taken back when I first met you because of just your demeanor and the way you handled yourself and carried yourself, and how good you were. And I tell you what, all of that stuff is paid off because now you're the lead guy on radio. You're the first fill-in on television. Of course, the TV crew, everybody raves about them. Marcelo and Grant, they're really good together. But I tell you what, there's not a beat that's skipped when Don's on vacation and you take over. And the ability for you to do football and basketball and baseball and all of those different sports and be just as good at each one of them must take a hell of a lot of work and studying. That was something that I wasn't real good at, but evidently you've really done and taken a great part in it.
Well, thanks again for all the nice words. I would say, with the different sports, they each sort of have their own unique personalities, right? Like we know that as fans and as people who watch or listen to games. And it's the same thing as a broadcaster. Like the way you get ready for a baseball game is fully different the way you get ready for football than the way you get ready for a basketball broadcast. But for me, like the thing that's always the same is, I try and go in there as the most prepared person in the building. Like that's my comfort level. That's how I feel like I'm going to have the confidence I need, to go up to it. And I spend a lot of time thinking about athletes, of course, talking about them as much as I do. And like in baseball, we've had so many great conversations in the last 10 years or so about analytics and like the place of numbers and the place of information in the game, because there is such thing as information overload. You don't want a star hitter getting into the box thinking too much, because he's got an incredible natural talent and ability that you want to be able to have come out. And if he's inside his own head and thinking too much about X, Y, and Z, maybe he's not going to be like ready to perform in a peak sort of way. So there is like that fine line. Same thing for broadcasting. But for me, I know like if I have all the info, I'll feel at my best, even if I'm not using it. It's just kind of like sitting in the back of my brain, but I wrote it out earlier in the day, or I typed it out earlier in the day. And like, again, that's for me what I have to do. It's different for everybody, as it is for players. But yeah, like I take it really seriously. And I think that's probably what you were alluding to when we first met, because I was like, this punk kid, and you didn't know me from Adam, and who is he and why is he here? And, why does he look like he's 12 years old at the time? But, like, that's
at the time. You still look like you're 12.
I don't know. 2 kids later, I'm not sure. But, like, it's and that's the thing I'm most proud of, I guess I would say. And the thing that I feel like when I meet people like you, especially people who have played at the highest level and people who have broadcast at the highest level, like, they're like, okay, he cares, like he's prepared, he's into it, he's not just like flying by the seat of his pants. And I take all of this really, really seriously. Like, yeah, it's a game, baseball, and it's an entertainment product. But for the players whose games I'm broadcasting, and for me, it's a livelihood, it's a profession. And in that moment, it's the most important thing in the world. And so I like to treat it as such for those guys and for myself.
8 years. This is your 8th year with the Padre organization, which blows me away. It blows me away that amount of time has gone by since you first joined this organization. Because when you did, I was down there also kind of milling around at the time. And then, of course, we did some social hours together. That show needs to come back. I get asked about that every single day. I mean, I swear to you, people ask me about that show all the time. So as you climb up the ladder and get in a more higher position, if you're not there already, we need to bring the social hour back. That was a fun show.
It was a lot of fun, and I get asked about it all the time too. We brought it back last year during the COVID shutdown, sort of like an at-home version, just to help, I think, fill the evenings when there were no games, for a few months there. And the response we got was like overwhelming. It was super positive. And I think more importantly than that, like, I think people were just so appreciative. For a lot of people, part of their lives, a big part of their lives, were like watching games at 7 o'clock every night. And you couldn't do that in April and May and June, and most of July last year. So there was an emptiness. And that's why we brought the show back. It was like, all right, let's just try and give everybody like an hour of baseball a night. It won't be the same as a game. It won't be as big of a deal. But like it's Linus with his blankie, baseball for a lot of people. And so we wanted to be able to give a little bit of a taste of that. The good thing is, for me personally, if the season is going on as planned, I don't really have time, for that show. But obviously there are other people, who could participate. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's above my pay grade, as I like to say, in terms of why it does or does not exist at a given moment. But it was really special bringing it back last year. And it really, I think, meant a lot to those of us who worked on it. It was like a small handful of people who really worked hard to make it happen. We could tell how much it meant to the fans.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed not only working on the show with you, but also doing the post game on the Saturday nights, which turned out to be pretty good. And people talk about that a lot too. Let's go to this ball club this year. I mean, there was so much hype surrounding this ball club over the course of the winter, not only locally, but nationally. I mean, this club's being called out by people that know the game as possibly a club that could overtake the Dodgers. I know that that's not something that the players nor manager Jay Stingler talks about. I know as a broadcaster, you feel so close to those guys. What is the feeling in camp this year opposed to the way it has been?
Well, let me just start by saying, because of COVID, we can't go in the clubhouse. We don't really get to talk to the players except for like Zoom calls, which the media is a part of. Now, that said, I do have insight, and I do hear from these guys every day. But I just start by saying it's not the same as it normally is, like where I could go into the clubhouse and pull somebody aside for 6 minutes and just kind of get a sense or a feel. So I don't have that, but I don't think there's any question that it's night and day from just a couple of years ago. There is an expectation of winning, and not winning like 85 games. I mean, like, there's an expectation for winning. And I would never say World Series or bust, because I don't think that's the position that they're in. But like, they expect to be one of the best teams in baseball. And on paper, they should be one of the best teams in baseball. And that's like a hell of an exciting thing to think about and talk about. But, one thing we have heard, and we've heard it from Manny, and I think we heard it from Haas also. A couple of guys, Hosmer's obviously won a World Series. Manny had some playoff runs in Baltimore, and they're kind of the clubhouse leaders among the position players. And they have each made comments this spring about how, like, now everybody knows what it feels like. They know what it's like to watch the other team celebrate at the end of a playoff series. you know, when the Dodgers knocked them out in the division round last year. Like, they're saying we don't have to tell these young guys or these guys who haven't been to the playoffs
What was this?
They were there. They learned it. They did it. They went through it. And I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know about what their own expectations are. Like, this isn't teaching time anymore. You know, this isn't like bring everybody around time. This is like, all right, let's go out and do it. You guys know what it takes. Now it's time to go do it.
Any player in particular stand out to you? Just you. I'm not going by what the national media is talking about with naturally what's going to happen with at the second base position or anything like that. I'm just talking about any players in general that jump out at Jesse Agler.
You know, it's not even been 2 full weeks yet, so you know, I try not to put too much stock into like anything like that. Musgrove, who pitches tomorrow, was really sharp in his first outing. So was Darvish. I'm a big Darvish guy. I'm a really big Darvish guy. Like, I think he's exceptionally talented, and he's just fun and interesting. And for a broadcaster, he's a little bit of a dream because there's just so much to say and so much history there, and it's so fascinating. And you know, I'm really looking forward to telling his story over the course of the season. And same for Musgrove, frankly. There's a lot there as a local guy and everything that goes into that. You know, on the position player side, I mean, Tatis, he's had like a flu bug the last couple of days. He hasn't been out there, but it seems like every time he does something where you just go, man, we are lucky. You know what I mean? Like, he had a grand slam against the Diamondbacks last week. It probably just now landed. And it was like, oh, cool. We're just kind of picking up right where we left off last year. And he's a generational talent. He really is. And you know, I think I speak for Padre fans when I say we just feel so fortunate that, you know, we get to watch him on a night in, night out basis. Trent Grisham's another guy. I think Trent Grisham, I was talking to somebody with the Rockies today. I think Trent Grisham's going to be like a multi-all-star when it's all said and done, playing center field for the Padres. Like, he is a very good baseball player. Won a Gold Glove last year in center field in his first whole season as a big leaguer, although, of course, it was only 60 games. And he's a guy that, you know, I really, really like a lot. But it's easier to think about, like, just the whole picture. You know, I mean, in 2 weeks in, it's like everybody seems to be doing what you want, what you expect. And it's going to be an awful, awful fun summer. It really is.
Cronenworth looks like he just picked up where he left off. And with all the talk of he might lose his position or he might have to move to the outfield, couple of guys look like they're having a little bit of a problem swinging the bat early on. But, again, it's only been 10 to 15 at bats, so it's no big deal.
Yeah.
So it's but hopefully they'll come around. The guy that I'm excited about that hasn't looked like, at least from this side of things, that there's any arm issues whatsoever is, and now you already know who I'm going to say, is Lamet. When I was extremely worried about him, I'm sure along with a lot of other people, over the course of the winter on what's going to happen when he shows up in spring training, and is his arm going to be good, or is something like a Clevenger deal going to happen with him? I feel pretty confident that he's come along and he's well. How has he looked to you?
I mean, he's looked, you know, it's been really limited, but he's looked like Lamet. You know, yesterday or the day before, as you know, the days start to blend a little bit in spring training around this point. He was throwing live sim game type, you know, stuff on the backfield. He hasn't pitched in a regular game yet this year. And he was throwing sliders for the first time in one of those scenarios. And it went well. And he felt good the next day. And that's the most important thing. I don't know that we're like fully out of the woods with him. The Padres are taking it really, really slowly. I think, honestly, at this point, like, best case scenario, he probably makes 3 spring training starts before opening day. You know, is that enough to get him out there in one of the first couple games? Maybe, maybe not. You know, he really wants to be out there, understandably, and it would be great if he would be able to. But, you know, the Padres are very much playing the long game with him. They're not, I don't think, being like, we got to get this guy ready for the first week of April. We want to make sure that he's out there to face the Diamondbacks. Like, that's not the mentality, it doesn't seem. The mentality, it appears, is let's do everything we can to bring him along now in a way that will, you know, give him the best chance to be a significant full-time contributor in 2021. So it's a little tough. You know, these elbow things, you just never know. So far, like you said, it does seem like it's going about as well as it could. But, you know, it's kind of cautious optimism, I think, just because of the nature of the issue and the nature of the human body, honestly.
Well, I think it's a good idea to do exactly what the ball club's doing with him naturally, and it seems to be the way of the game now. That there's really, I don't want to really say overprotection. I'm just going to say an extreme caution for pitchers in the game of baseball. I mean, we saw the rules, the way they went down in spring training this year, where an umpire or an umpire, an umpire is out of it. A manager can call an inning after 20 pitches. I swear to God, there was a game the other day, and I'm sitting watching the game with my wife, and I told her, I go, if this guy throws this pitch to this hitter and it's a ball, because I can't remember if it was a Padre game or not. Man, that's how my mind is going. He worked his way into a bases loaded situation with no out. He punched the next three guys out. And on the 20th pitch, he had a 3-2 count with no outs and the bases loaded. And I told my wife, I go, the manager is going to stand up and he's going to call the inning off. I go, that's what I would do, because as much as people want to talk about you don't want to win the game, it's all about protecting the pitcher and winning the game in my mind. So have you seen a situation where an inning's been called where it was evident the manager didn't want the other team to score?
I don't think it's been that. I really do think it's about protecting the pitcher. We've only seen it a handful of times. The one that stands out to me would be Mackenzie Gore's first start, which was last week against the Rangers in Surprise. And he had a bumpy first inning. He walked three guys. He had thrown 20 whatever pitches. They got him out of there. And I don't think it was to mess with Texas, pun intended. I think it was just to all right, let's get him into the dugout, talk to him, calm him down, whatever mechanical conversation. I don't know what they said, but let's have a conversation with him. And so we can send him back out there for the second inning, kind of fresh and all that. And he came out and he had a great 1-2-3 minute. Without that rule in place, Kurt, what happens in that first inning? Maybe he can't get the third out. Maybe he's got to throw 15 more pitches and then he can't come out for the second inning. There's a lot of things that could have gone off there. And that's sort of letting nature take its course within the confines of a game, which is the normal way to think about it. But the reality is these games don't count. They don't matter. They are about developing. They are about, getting people ready physically for the season. Another example, totally different today, and I didn't read anything after the game, so I don't know if it was brought up, but there was a ground ball at Trevor Story in the Padre Rocky game today, and he charged in and barehanded it. And I, watching it live, was 90% sure he barehanded it just to practice his barehand. He didn't need to barehand it. There was no reason to barehand it. He ended up not making the play. But I think in his mind it was all right, here's an opportunity for me to try something in real time in game action. It really can't be replicated in a fungo session, at 8 o'clock in the morning in the backfield. So that's the kind of stuff that's taking place in spring training. So that's why I love the rule. I think it really does allow for better protection of the guys, but also just helps better ready them, no matter their situation for the regular season. And that's what this should be about. They are games. I get it. There are paying customers. I understand that. But, big picture, it's about more than that. So I've been really impressed with the way that rule has gone. I have not, I guess, to answer your question directly, I have not seen a situation where it seemed like they did it just to mess with the other team. Although I could see that happening in a divisional matchup. The reality is if you're playing the Dodgers and they got Mookie Betts coming up with the bases loaded and your guy just threw his 20th pitch, maybe you're saying, screw off. We'll end this inning. But I haven't seen anything like that yet.
Well, I'm not even sure Jesse realizes how much him and I have in common. One thing I found out recently, you and I don't live very far apart. By the way.
Okay.
We're not going to complain by where we live, but we don't live very far apart. And you can feel secure and knowing it's just me that knows. The other thing is Jesse and I are both from Miami.
Yeah.
Jesse was at the first game in Miami Marlins franchise history. And he watched a guy by the name of Charlie Huff pitch against the Los Angeles Dodgers that night, who I hit against in high school. So the aging knuckleballing right-hander that you watched as a young boy in Miami, we're both from Miami. Charlie Huff went to Hialeah High School, and I hit against him and his brother. And by the way, his brother was better than Charlie was at the time. And we have no. His brother was a fastball slider pitcher, and so was Charlie. Charlie didn't throw a knuckleball back then. Yeah, he didn't. So it was there was a lot of baseball talent down in Miami, like there still is. And I was just there a couple of weeks ago. I'm gonna go back in a couple of weeks, and I'm trying to set my son up to play in the South Florida Summer League this coming summer.
Very cool. Yeah. So that game, first of all, a couple of things. It was my 11th birthday, that first ever Marlin game against the Dodgers in '93. And I think it was like the only time in my life my parents took me out of school early for something fun. Like school was always the priority, and being in class. And, I was 11, it was like 5th or 6th grade, whatever it was. And I got to be taken out of school to go to that game, the first ever Marlin game, which was really neat. The funny thing, too, if you go watch the first pitch of that game, Charlie Huff throws a knuckleball. It's about 8 feet off the plate, and it's called strike one, which I think is like, a thing you get when it's the first ever game in franchise history. But it's a funny little thing you can find on YouTube, I'm sure. But, yeah, it's a great baseball town, always has been. Probably always will be. And it's different generations, like you said. It's you and the Huffs and like Warren Cromartie back in the day, and, Manny now, and everything in between. And, the guys who are local, but also guys who come from elsewhere to play college baseball in South Florida, whether it's at FAU. The guy the Padres face today started for the Rockies, Gomber. He pitched at FAU. Whether it's obviously University of Miami, where I went. Ryan Braun came from California to play at the University of Miami. So it's just an incredible hotbed. Local guys, out of town guys coming to play college baseball there. Like the football gets more attention. I know. There's an incredible amount of football talent too. But it's so neat coming from that. And there is, as I'm sure it is for the kids who grew up here in San Diego and feel like they're brothers in arms with Tony Gwynn Jr. or anybody else who came through another baseball hotbed. You feel like a connection. You really do. And it's a neat thing because that can span generations. And had you and I not worked together, and met each other through the Padres, had we met some other way, we would have had that connection. We would have had that thing, to go back to, and to share a Warren Cromartie story or something like that. I mean, that's what's so cool about sports, those generational connections we all get to make.
Tony Gwynn Jr. was just mentioned by Jesse. That's his partner in the booth this season for Padre broadcast, because we all know in the Southern California area that Ted Leitner, the longtime radio voice of the San Diego Padres, hung him up, as they use the terminology in baseball. And Ted is actually in a position with the San Diego Ball Club. You can hear Jesse. You can hear Tony Gwynn Jr., who sounds a lot like his dad, folks. Trust me, he really does. The laugh's not the same, but the voice is very, very similar. You can hear them both on 97.3 The Fan, the Padres local flagship station here in San Diego. I've got to really say thank you, Jesse, for giving us the time. I appreciate you taking it. I know it's still young in the season, and there's not a whole lot to say about the ball club when it comes to specific statistics and things like that, but it's always fun to catch up, and I really thank you.
My pleasure, Kurt. Always great talking ball with you. I enjoyed it on Social Hour, enjoy it now, and hopefully, things are a little bit more normal this summer, and we get to see you out at the ballpark and get to say hi.
Yeah, it seems like a long time since I've been there.
Yeah.
8 years in the Padre organization for Jesse Agler. You'll be able to hear him. Again, I appreciated Jesse. Grumpy old men are on, and I'm not talking about Jesse. I'm talking about KB. Hank's not with us, but I'll be back with you for another 21 or 22 minutes right after this.